The Wilson family was excited, you know. They were moving to a new place. Their new house stood on Willow Creek Lane. And oh boy, it was an old house, really old. Paint peeled from its wooden siding like dry skin. And the porch, well, it sagged a little on one side. Mum said it had character, while Dad thought it needed work. 10-year-old Lily and 7-year-old Tom just thought it looked spooky. They liked spooky things, but this felt different, like the house was watching them, waiting for them to come inside. The moving truck rumbled up the long gravel driveway. This was their new home now. Inside, it was a maze of rooms, dust motes dancing in the weak sunlight. The air smelled of old wood and something else, something sweet and faintly floral like old perfume. Lily wrinkled her nose and Tom sneezed. Their voices echoed in the empty spaces, and each footstep on the creaky wooden floors seemed too loud. Mum tried to be cheerful, pointing out the large windows, and Dad talked about renovations, new paint, and fixing the floors. But even their voices sounded small in the vastness of the old house. It felt like they were intruders in a place that had its own secrets, a place that wasn't quite ready to share them. Lily chose a bedroom upstairs with faded floral wallpaper and a large grimy window overlooking the overgrown backyard. Tom picked the room next door, smaller, with a strange stain on the ceiling. They tried to make it feel like home, putting up posters and unpacking their favourite toys. But the house felt cold. Even when Mum turned up the heat, a chill lingered. It wasn't just the temperature, it was a feeling that they were not alone, that someone or something was already living there, hidden in the shadows. As evening approached, shadows grew longer, and the house seemed to sigh around them. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a footstep, every rustle of leaves outside like a whisper. Dad built a fire in the old stone fireplace. The flames crackled and popped, casting dancing shadows on the walls. It should have been cozy, but Lily kept looking over her shoulder, and Tom stayed close to Mum. The old house on Willow Creek Lane had a story, and the Wilsons were about to become a part of it, whether they wanted to or not. A few days after moving in, Dad decided to explore the attic. Might be some treasures up there, he said, trying to sound adventurous. Or maybe just some old junk, Mum had muttered under her breath. The attic door was a small square panel in the ceiling of the upstairs hallway. It was stuck fast, and Dad had to use a crowbar to pry it open. A shower of dust and cobwebs rained down, and a musty smell, even stronger than in the rest of the house, filled the air. It was the smell of forgotten things, of time standing still. Lily and Tom watched from a safe distance, their curiosity mixed with a little bit of fear. Dad unfolded a rickety wooden ladder, which groaned under his weight as he climbed. "It's dark up here," he called down. "Hand me that flashlight, Tom." Tom nervously passed up the heavy flashlight, its beam cutting a weak path through the gloom. The attic was vast, stretching the entire length of the house. Old trunks and broken furniture lay scattered about like sleeping beasts. Sheets covered some items, making them look like ghostly figures in the dim light. The air was thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe normally. It felt like stepping into another world, a world that had been sealed away for a very long time. "Anything interesting, honey?" Mum called from the bottom of the ladder. Dad coughed. "Just a lot of dust. And... wait a minute." His voice changed with a new note in it. Surprise or something else? Lily craned her neck, trying to see, and Tom shuffled his feet nervously. The silence from the attic stretched on for a moment too long. Then, Dad started to climb back down, carrying something small, wrapped in a dusty yellowed piece of cloth. He looked a little pale. The attic seemed darker now, even with the flashlight still on. He reached the bottom of the ladder and carefully placed his discovery on the hallway floor, unwrapping the cloth. Inside lay a doll, an old-fashioned porcelain doll about a foot tall, with wide, unblinking blue glass eyes. Its painted lips were curved into a faint, knowing smile. Its dress was made of faded lace, now stained and torn in places. Its synthetic golden hair was matted and tangled. It wasn't a pretty doll. There was something unsettling about its fixed stare. Lily felt a shiver run down her spine, and Tom took a step back, closer to Mom. The doll just lay there, silent and still. "Well, that's something," Mum said, trying to sound polite. She didn't look thrilled. The doll had a strange aura about it. Its porcelain skin was grimy, covered in a fine layer of attic dust. One of its rosy cheeks had a small chip. Its blue eyes seemed to follow them, no matter where they stood. Lily reached out a hesitant finger to touch its lace dress. The fabric felt brittle, almost crumbling. "It's creepy," Tom whispered, his voice barely audible. He was right, it was very creepy. The smile on its face didn't seem friendly. It seemed more like a secret it was keeping. Dad picked up the doll. "Probably belonged to a child who lived here a long time ago," he said. "We should probably just throw it out. It's pretty dilapidated." He held it up, and its head lolled slightly to one side as if it were listening. Its glass eyes caught the light, glinting unnervingly. Lily found herself staring back into those eyes. They seemed too deep, too knowing for a simple toy. She had the sudden, absurd thought that the doll didn't want to be thrown out. It felt like a warning, a silent plea, or perhaps a silent threat. Mum nodded in agreement with Dad. "Yes, let's get rid of it. It gives me the shivers." She took the doll from Dad, holding it gingerly by its dusty dress. She didn't want to touch its porcelain skin. She carried it downstairs, heading for the trash cans outside. Lily and Tom followed, curious to see it go. It felt like they were exorcising a tiny, unwelcome spirit from their new home. As Mum dropped it into the metal bin with a dull thud, Lily felt a strange sense of relief, but also a tiny prickle of unease, as if it wasn't truly gone, as if it was just waiting. That night, Lily had trouble sleeping. She kept thinking about the doll, its unblinking eyes, its faint, knowing smile. She imagined it lying in the cold, dark trash can. Was it lonely or was it angry? She told herself it was just a doll, an old, broken toy, nothing to be afraid of. But the image of its face kept flashing in her mind. The house seemed quieter than usual, but also more watchful. Every creak and groan sounded like the doll, somehow, making its way back. She pulled her covers up to her chin, wishing for morning to come quickly and banish these silly thoughts. The next morning, the sun shone brightly, and the fears of the night seemed distant. Lily felt a little foolish for being scared of an old doll. Dad took the trash cans to the curb for the garbage truck. They heard its loud rumbling and crashing as it made its way down Willow Creek Lane. The doll was gone. For good, they thought. The family ate breakfast, the mood lighter than it had been in days. They talked about painting the kitchen and planned a trip to the local park. The old house felt a little less oppressive, a little more like a home. Maybe things were finally settling down. Later that day, Lily was playing in her room. She was trying to arrange her books on her new shelf, humming a little tune, feeling content. Then she saw it, sitting on her bed, propped up against her pillows. It was the doll. Annabelle, as she had started to think of it, though no one had named it. Her heart leaped into her throat. It couldn't be. It was impossible. Dad had thrown it away. The garbage truck had taken it. Yet there it was, staring at her with those same unblinking blue eyes. Its faint smile seemed wider now, more triumphant. Lily screamed. She screamed so loud that Mum and Dad came running upstairs with Tom trailing behind them, his eyes wide with alarm. "What is it, sweetie? What's wrong?" Mum asked, her voice full of concern. Lily could only point at the doll on her bed. Dad's face went pale. Mum gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "But how?" Dad stammered. "I threw it in the trash. I saw the truck empty the bin." He looked confused, then angry. "One of you kids is playing a prank, and it's not funny," he accused, looking from Lily to Tom. Both children shook their heads vehemently. "No, Dad, we didn't," Lily cried. "I wouldn't touch that thing," Tom added, shrinking away from the doll. Mum looked at Dad, then at the children, then back at the doll. There was no way the children could have retrieved it. The trash had been collected. The bin was empty. This was not a prank. This was something else, something strange and unsettling. The doll sat there, silent and watchful, as if enjoying the confusion and fear it was causing. Its presence was a cold weight in the room. Section 5. Desperate measures, persistent presence. Dad was, furious. He grabbed the doll, his jaw tight, muttering, "This time it's really going." He marched out of the house, the doll clutched firmly in his hand. He didn't put it in their own trash can, no sir. He drove it several miles away to a public dumpster behind a supermarket. He made sure it was buried deep under bags of garbage. He watched as a truck later emptied that dumpster too. He came home looking grim, but, satisfied. "It's gone," he announced. "For good this time, no more creepy doll." The family tried to relax, but a sense of dread, well, it lingered. The next morning, Tom found it. It was sitting on the porch swing, gently rocking back and forth in the morning breeze, as if it had been waiting for them to wake up. It looked cleaner. Some of the grime was gone from its porcelain face. Its matted hair seemed a little smoother. Tom didn't scream this time. He just stood there, frozen, his eyes fixed on the doll. Then he turned and ran inside, his face ashen. "It's back," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's on the porch." The hope that had flickered briefly in the Wilson household died completely. Desperation set in. Dad tried burying it in the backyard. The next day it was sitting on the kitchen table right next to the fruit bowl. Mum tried sealing it in a box and hiding it in the deepest, darkest corner of the basement. It reappeared on Lily's dresser, its blue eyes glinting in the dim light. They even tried burning it in the fireplace. The porcelain wouldn't catch fire properly, only smudging its face with soot. And the smell was awful, acrid and chemical. The following morning it was back in the attic, sitting on the old trunk where they had first found it, the soot mysteriously gone. Each time the doll returned, it seemed a little different. The chip on its cheek was smaller, the stains on its lace dress were fainter. Its synthetic hair looked less tangled, almost freshly brushed. Its painted smile seemed more pronounced, more knowing. It was as if, with each attempt to discard it, the doll was not only returning, but also renewing itself. It was becoming less like a forgotten relic and more like something alive. The Wilsons were trapped. The doll refused to leave, and it was getting stronger. The house no longer felt like their own. It belonged to Annabelle. Section 6. The Doll That Grew Younger. The transformation was subtle at first, a little less dust, a little more shine to its glass eyes. But as the days turned into weeks and the doll kept returning, the changes became undeniable. The faded lace of its dress began to look brighter, the fabric less brittle. The tiny tears and stains that had marred its perfection were slowly vanishing, as if mended by an invisible hand. Lily noticed it first. She had a morbid fascination with the doll, even as it terrified her. She would stare at it when it reappeared, cataloguing the alterations. Its porcelain skin, once grimy, now had a soft, almost luminous glow. The chip on its cheek, once a noticeable flaw, had shrunk to a mere pinprick, then disappeared entirely. Its painted lips seemed fuller, a richer shade of red. Its golden hair, initially a matted mess, now fell in soft, perfect ringlets around its face. It looked like a brand new doll, or perhaps a doll that was somehow reversing the ravages of time. It was no longer just creepy, it was becoming unnervingly beautiful. But this beauty was cold, artificial, and deeply unsettling. It was the beauty of something that shouldn't exist, something unnatural. The family watched this impossible rejuvenation with growing horror. With each return, the doll also seemed more present. Its gaze felt more intense, more focused. When they found it sitting in a room, it felt less like a discarded object and more like an observer, patiently watching their every move. Sometimes Lily would catch a flicker of movement from the corner of her eye, but when she looked directly, the doll would be perfectly still. Yet the feeling that it had just moved, just settled into its new position, was overwhelming. It was as if it was toying with them, enjoying their fear and their futile attempts to be rid of it. Dad stopped trying to throw it away. What was the point? It always came back. He tried locking it in a sturdy metal toolbox and storing it in the shed. The next morning the toolbox was empty, the lock still secure. The doll was sitting on the mantelpiece in the living room, its blue eyes gleaming in the morning light, looking more pristine than ever. It was cleaner, brighter, and somehow more lifelike. Its smile seemed to mock their efforts. The doll wasn't just refusing to leave, it was thriving, drawing some unseen energy from their fear, or from the house itself. It was becoming a permanent, terrifying fixture in their lives. Section 7. Shadows in the hallway. As Annabelle grew cleaner and more lifelike, other strange things began to happen. Things that couldn't be easily explained. Whispers seemed to drift through the hallways when no one was speaking. Soft sibilant sounds, like someone sharing a secret just out of earshot. Lily would hear her name called in a faint, childish voice, but when she turned, no one would be there. Tom started having nightmares, terrible nightmares about the doll chasing him, its blue eyes glowing in the dark, its tiny porcelain hands reaching for him. He would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat. Doors would creak open and slam shut on their own, even when there was no wind. Objects would move. A book would fall from a shelf. A glass would slide across the table. Small, insignificant things, but they added to the growing sense of unease. The house felt alive with a malevolent energy. The air was often cold, even in rooms where the heating was on full blast. Cold spots would appear and disappear randomly. Mum once felt an icy breath on the back of her neck when she was alone in the kitchen. She turned around, her heart pounding, but there was nothing there. Only the doll, sitting on its usual spot on the counter, watching. The doll itself became more active, or so it seemed. They would leave it in one room only to find it moments later in another, in a completely different position. Once, Lily saw it sitting at the top of the stairs, looking down at her. She was sure she had left it in her bedroom. Its head was tilted, as if curious. Another time, Mum found it in the laundry basket, nestled amongst the clean clothes, its smile serene. It was as if it was exploring the house, making itself comfortable, claiming every corner as its own. The family began to feel like prisoners in their own home, constantly watched by those unblinking blue eyes. The most disturbing incident happened one evening. The family was in the living room, trying to ignore the doll, which sat on the mantelpiece. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. They were plunged into darkness. A child's giggle echoed through the room. It was a cold, high-pitched sound, not belonging to Lily or Tom. Then, a faint, eerie melody, like an old music box, began to play. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the doll. Dad fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking, and turned on the flashlight. The doll was still on the mantelpiece, its smile wider than ever. The music stopped. The lights flickered back on, but the fear remained thicker and colder than before. Section 8. Flight from Willow Creek. The giggling and the music box tune were the breaking point. Mum couldn't take it anymore. Her nerves were shattered. She spent her days crying and her nights wide awake, listening for every creak and whisper. "We have to leave, John," she pleaded with Dad, her voice hoarse. "This house, this doll, it's not safe." Dad, who had tried to remain rational, to find logical explanations, finally had to admit defeat. There was no logic here. There was only an encroaching darkness centered around that pristine, smiling doll. He looked at his pale, frightened children and knew Mum was right. They didn't bother packing much, just the essentials. Clothes, important documents, a few cherished belongings. They didn't want anything that had been in that house for too long. They certainly weren't taking any furniture. The thought of accidentally transporting the doll with them was too terrifying to contemplate. They worked quickly, silently, a sense of urgency pressing down on them. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every sound made them jump. Annabelle sat on the living room sofa watching them. Her blue eyes seemed to follow their frantic movements. Her smile was fixed, serene, almost triumphant. As Dad carried the last suitcase to the car, he paused at the doorway. He looked back into the dimly lit living room. The doll was still there, perched on the sofa. For a moment, he thought he saw its head turn slightly, as if bidding him farewell, or perhaps good riddance. He shivered, a cold dread seeping into his bones. He slammed the door shut, locking it. though he knew it was a futile gesture. Locks wouldn't keep that thing contained if it didn't want to be. He hurried to the car where his family was waiting, their faces pale and drawn in the dim glow of the streetlights. They drove away from the old house on Willow Creek Lane without looking back. The further they got, the lighter the atmosphere in the car seemed to become. It was as if a heavy weight was being lifted from their shoulders. They didn't know where they were going. They would stay with relatives for a while, figure things out. Anything was better than staying in that house with that doll. As the house disappeared from view in the rearview mirror, Lily thought she saw a tiny light flicker in an upstairs window. But she didn't say anything. She just wanted to forget, to pretend Annabelle never existed. Section 9. A new family, an old welcome. Months passed. The old house on Willow Creek Lane stood empty. Weeds grew high in the yard. Dust gathered on the windowsills. Inside, everything was silent, except perhaps for the faint, almost imperceptible creak of a floorboard or the soft rustle of lace. Annabelle sat on the living room sofa, patiently waiting. Her porcelain skin gleamed in the occasional shaft of moonlight that pierced the gloom. Her blue eyes stared out into the darkness. Her smile remained, serene and knowing. She was not lonely. The house was her companion, and she knew with an unshakable certainty that someone else would come. They always did. One sunny spring morning, a new car pulled up the gravel driveway. The Peterson family, a young couple, Mark and Sarah, and their bright-eyed 6-year-old daughter, Emily. They were full of hope and excitement. They saw an old house with character, a place to make their own. They didn't see the lingering shadows or feel the faint chill in the air. "It's perfect," Sarah exclaimed, her eyes shining. Mark squeezed her hand, smiling. Emily ran towards the porch, eager to explore her new home. The house seemed to watch them, a silent, ancient presence. While her parents discussed plans with the realtor, Emily wandered inside. The house was dusty and smelled faintly of old things. She liked it. It felt like a house from a storybook. She climbed the creaky stairs, her small hand trailing along the banister. Upstairs she noticed a small square panel in the ceiling, an attic. She wondered what treasures might be hidden up there. She imagined old toys, forgotten games, maybe even a secret map. Her curiosity piqued. She decided that would be the first place she would explore properly, once they were settled in. Later that week, after the Petersons had moved in some of their belongings, Emily found her way to the attic ladder. With a little help from her dad, she climbed into the dusty space. It was filled with old, forgotten things, just as she had imagined. And there, sitting on a dusty old trunk, as if waiting just for her, was a beautiful doll. It had wide, unblinking blue glass eyes. Its painted lips were curved into a faint, sweet smile. Its golden hair fell in perfect ringlets. "Mummy, Daddy, look what I found!" Emily called out, her voice filled with delight as she carefully picked up her new treasure. Annabelle had found a new friend,